Welcome back to Let the Record Skip, the favorite podcast of your distant uncle that only shows up for Thanksgiving and takes all the leftovers.
We're your hosts. I'm Austin.
I'm Nick.
Jake.
Todd.
And
Oh, wait,
today...
We were talking over each other, Nick. What's your name again?
I'm Andrew.
Let's keep this in.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So today we got something special planned. It was Bosch's idea, so I'm going to let Bosch take it from here.
Definitely. So for those of you who don't know what Verzuz is, it's a series that was created by Timbaland and Swiss Beats where two big artists go head-to-head and put their 20 biggest hits against each other. So like one artist plays one of their hits and the other plays a hit to counter it. And it's been going on since quarantine pretty much happened. And a lot of big artists have done it. There's been DMX versus Snoop Dogg. There's been Ludacris versus Nelly, Brandy versus Monica. It's just been amazing. And I think it's been really great for the culture, really great for hip-hop and R&B and music in general. And what we're going to do here today is make our own little mock versus tournament. We got 5 artists on the docket right now. And we're pretty much going to explain to you who we think would win each matchup and why. I actually made quite a few playlists for all these artists. We'll have them linked in the description below, so you guys can follow along with us. So first off, we got T.I. versus 50 Cent.
All right. So what should we start with? Should we start with point coverage, or should we talk about what we had, as a lineup?
I think we should just go into why we chose each winner and stuff. And
okay, that's simple. All right, who wants to go first?
I could go first if you guys want.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so with T.I. versus 50 Cent, I'm pretty much just going to explain why I think this was a good matchup in the first place, because T.I. was rumored to go against Busta, but then he declined that. And now he's saying he's going against Jeezy. The official page announced T.I. versus Jeezy just a few minutes ago, actually. But personally, I think T.I. versus 50 would be a much better matchup because, let's see, 50's run may have been only from like 2003 to 2007. Those were the years where 50 was the big thing. But during that run, 50 was like the biggest artist in the entire world. And Get Rich or Die Trying, as most of you know, has been a very influential album to hip-hop. And the whole G-Unit movement was massive. Like, everyone was wearing G-Unit clothing, and G-Unit pretty much started this thing where everyone was in a hip-hop crew now.
T.I. tried that, too, with Hustle Gang, which is pretty interesting. I mean, it never really – I don't know if it's still active, but I know they released 2 albums under it. I know – they're not as concise and have a straightforward path like a G-Unit album. They're kind of all over the place in terms of sound and direction, but like there's some few gems on those albums. I mean, the first mixtape had Animal with B.O.B. and T.I. and Travis Scott, which I think has like some of their best verses of all time.
Definitely. So 50 was huge in those years, 2003 through 2007.
Yeah.
And as for T.I., his run lasted a little bit longer than that, because T.I. was never the biggest artist in the world during his run, but he's had hits all throughout since 2003 all the way up to 2014.
Oh, yeah.
Then you go to 50. His big hits in, like, the Get Rich or Die Trying era were, like, In the Club, 21 Questions, P.I.M.P. You had Many Men, which was such an iconic song. And then on The Massacre, which was, like, the best-selling rap album during the first week in its time, that had Candy Shop, Disco Inferno, and Just a Little Bit. So 50's run, 2003 to 2005, he was unstoppable. Every single song he was coming out with was charting in the top 10, and he had a couple number 1 hits. In the Club and Candy Shop, I know, were both number 1s. But then 2007 came, and 50 was kind of dying out a little bit with his album Curtis. We'll get a little more as to why when we discuss another artist we're going to discuss today. But Curtis pretty much only had 2 major hits, AO Technology and I Get Money. And then 50 Cent had 2 other albums, Before I Self-Destruct and Animal Ambition. No one really remembers those albums that much. No one really talks about them.
Animal Ambition kind of came and went.
Who started his relative... Yeah, definitely. So T.I. started pretty much in 2004 is when he started making hits. He had 2 albums before then, I'm Serious and Trap Music. But when Urban Legend dropped, Bring 'Em Out and ASAP were the 2 big singles from that record. And those were like pretty big in the mainstream. And then King had What You Know and Why You Want It and Top Back. And then T.I. versus T.I.P. had Big Things Poppin'. And then 2008 came and T.I. was like officially one of the biggest rappers in the game with Paper Trail. He had Whatever You Like, Live Your Life, and Dead and Gone. Whatever You Like and Live Your Life were both #1 hits, I'm pretty sure. And then afterwards, T.I., his next 2 albums, he didn't really have any hits from those. But then even in 2014, that far into his career, he had a hit with No Mediocre off of Paperwork. So T.I. had a very long run.
Didn't he have About the Money off of Paperwork too?
Yeah, About the Money was also on Paperwork.
Yeah.
So as you could see, 50's run was a lot shorter than T.I.'s. But during 50's run, he was the biggest artist in the world. And that's why I got to say, even though when I was tallying up the score with the playlist that I made, I have 50 winning 10 rounds and T.I. winning 10 rounds. But overall, I got to give this to 50 just because of the influence of his hits. He has less of them than T.I., but the ones he does have were so impactful to hip-hop and done so much for the culture and influenced so many people that you can't deny it. 50 definitely would have this over T.I., and that's why I choose him as my winner.
Yeah, when 50 releases a hit, it just hits. Like it's bound to gain traction, especially overnight.
Yeah, and those first 2 albums, like I lived through the time period where 50 was huge. A fun fact is 50 was actually the first rapper I ever heard of by name. So Get Rich or Die Trying was one of the first rap albums I ever bought. And that pretty much was one of the albums that shaped my taste in hip-hop going forward. So 50 Cent was definitely a huge part of my upbringing and getting into rap music.
Yeah, for sure. All right. If you want to give it to 50, we got 1 for 50 then. Anybody want to go next? Any volunteers?
Well, since Bosch basically has a tie, I also had a tie as well. Just go
Okay.
with each matchup. And basically, my picks were Rubber Band Man, PIMP, I Get Money, ASAP, Many Men, 21 Questions, Magic Stick, Crack a Bottle, Patiently Waiting, Hate It or Love It, fucking classic that is, About the Money, Big Shit Poppin', My Love, You Don't Know Me, You Know What It Is, Just a Little Bit, Ball, Soldier, What You Do, Candy Shop, and that was it. That's the tie. You got 10. You got 10. But I will say, if I'm going to pick a winner, I think I would also probably pick T.I. because, first of all, you have the longevity that, Bosch speaks to, just going all the way back even in 2002, 2003 with trap music and Urban Legend and those defining trap albums of those the early 2000s era, and kind of right as that bling era was starting to take off, and kind of him at that era coming back with King and really transcending that at the time, and then really kind of going a little more pop rap after that. But ultimately he's always been able to circulate the genre that he's godfathered with, always having some sort of contribution to trap. Even if you want to extend it to 2015, he narrated Rodeo, which is an album.
Oh yeah, facts. Yeah, I forgot about that actually.
That's maybe not musically as much a contribution for T.I., but he was a part of another album that pretty much transformed the genre of trap music. And that's another thing, if you want to get into things like proteges, T.I. having guys like Travis being cool with, other artists.
B.O.B.
Yeah, B.O.B.
Yeah, he brought up a lot of good artists. I'm like blanking on a lot of them, but like
Azalea, Young Dro back in the day, he had that song.
Yeah. I forgot about Young Dro and Iggy. I forgot he brought up Iggy. He regrets that, I bet.
Pretty sure.
Yeah. I think he actually went on record and said that he regretted it. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for him.
So yeah, what I was saying is, even though 50 was a bit more influential on music as a whole, T.I.'s influence on trap music is undeniable. Him, Jeezy, and Gucci are three godfathers of the genre.
I think what's interesting too is you speak to the influence of T.I. on trap music and eventually the creation of things like drill and all that. And I feel like what 50 really accomplished was bringing an abrasive, aggressive East Coast sound to pop rap, and didn't have contributions to trap or anything like that, but really kind of reinvented what hip hop could be and the boastful, hedonistic sense that it was kind of turning toward the late 90s, especially on the East Coast. But I feel like it was a very short-lived, powerful, intense run that it did impact a lot of things. It was a great time to live through it. Again, like you said, 50 Cent was one of the first rappers that, I as a young child had conceived of. Everybody knew of In the Club by 2004 or 5, in kindergarten, first grade. I remember knowing of that song, not knowing what it's about. You just know the fucking chorus. And
same.
Yeah. So, it's memories like that and just acknowledging the legacy of Get Rich and Die Trying. But I feel like both have contributed a lot of great hits and momentum to their peers. But again, I go with T.I. just out of personal preference for discography and the longevity and that influence that he's had more directly with artists. Although Pop Smoke I'm a fan of, so shout out 50 for
50 finally did find a good protege in him.
Yeah. And then he died, so that's unfortunate. Rest in peace.
They led the game around 2005, but then they started beefing.
I know.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that because that was, like I said, Hate It or Love It's a classic. That's one of my favorite West Coast hip hop singles of all time. And, it sucks that they couldn't figure out more records, later on, maybe have more longevity in both of their careers. But
I think they made up around 2016 in a strip club or something.
Probably.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
I bet it was too late musically, though, at least.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go because I'm kind of going to build off of what Nick just said. So I gave this a lot of thought. This was like one of the ones that I put a lot of thought into because I love T.I. I love to put on for T.I. and I really do love 50 Cent. And I think it was kind of dirty to put so many of his hits on here. Like it's so dirty. Like this list is just unfair to T.I.'s account because when it comes to T.I. got to give it to him on album cuts. Like T.I. is somebody you look forward to for deep album cuts, and I think 50's a great hit rapper, but if you're looking for deep album cuts, he does have them, but they're not as quality as T.I. has with the longevity on top of that and the way he's been able to adapt like seamlessly. I had 50 at 15 hits and T.I. at 5. That's the thing. That's why I think it's a little unfair to T.I.'s advantage because if there were more like album cuts to this that I was more familiar with, I probably would have been swayed more towards a 10-10 score, maybe more in T.I.'s favor on some of these songs, but I don't know. I think 50 Cent just really made a mark whenever he dropped a hit, and T.I. is somebody that has just adapted and stayed strong. Like we talked about the Libra last week, and it's a great comeback since Paperwork, and I think it's just amazing that T.I. has just been somebody that's been able to hold his own. And Nick bringing up his proteges being Travis Scott, B.O.B., Bosch bringing up Young Dro and Iggy. It really does show that T.I. has a good ear and he knows what he's doing when he wants to craft a hit, but he selflessly gives it to those people. I have no doubt that T.I. could craft something of this magnitude, but I feel like he's just as included in the process of these albums that are becoming iconic hit driven albums like Iggy Azalea's where she blew up, or Travis Scott when he blew up because of working with T.I. and Kanye. And you brought up him narrating Rodeo. Like I firmly believe that T.I. deserves credit in those aspects, especially B.O.B. as well. So while I had 50 winning on the board, I honestly, after this discussion, have to give it to T.I., which actually surprises me because I went into this laughing, saying that 50 was going to win. But T.I. wins just based off influence, longevity, and just like the way he's been able to adapt. I can't stress it enough that T.I. is one of these rappers that's just still going strong after 20 years.
Definitely. And I want to go back to what you guys said about his album cuts being his best tracks. Like,
Yeah.
Versus did more album cuts than just the hits. I definitely have T.I. winning as well because some of T.I.'s album cuts, like, hit me right in the heart. Like, No Mercy, Castle Walls, Guns N' Roses off Trouble Man. Those songs are like...
Yeah, Guns N' Roses is one of my favorite T.I. songs. The one that he has with Akon, too, is one of my favorite. I think that's off Trouble Man or Paperwork. I can't remember.
Like, when T.I. gets deep and introspective, that's what I think is best.
And that's why the Libra shines, since Paperwork. It's just, it gets to that introspective viewpoint that he has currently, and I think that's something that he hasn't really given in a few years.
And I was really surprised that I chose 50 over T.I. because T.I.'s in my top 10. He's one of my favorite rappers ever. 50 I wouldn't even say is in my top 40. But when you look at overall influence, I just got to give it up to 50 because when he was big, he was like the only rapper who existed at the time.
Yeah.
So maybe like Eminem and like Nelly and stuff.
Yeah.
I also chose 50 Cent. Of the tracks that were listed, I just enjoyed his more. I mean, there was a few T.I. songs I liked, but if I had to give it a number, it would probably be 15-5, like Austin said. I've never really got into T.I. that much. I've always been more partial to 50 Cent, but I can understand what T.I. did for the genre of trap music, and he's still more prevalent today than 50 Cent is because, I mean, 50 hasn't really released anything worth anything in over 10 years. So
we're waiting on that Street King Immortal album that was announced a few years ago, but it doesn't seem like there's any weight with that.
Right?
I'm pretty sure Street King Immortal is like shelved now because he left Shady. I think he has to remake it or something like that.
I don't think that's ever going to come out. Honestly, the last good thing 50 made for me was that We Up single in 2013 he had with Kendrick. I thought that was a song that I actually heard and came across like recently and still kind of like.
See, that would have been a good comparison if we would have done We Up versus Memories back then and did like a Kendrick feature type of round in this. I was actually wondering if Memories back then was on here when you were gonna make the playlist.
Yeah, I was trying to focus mainly on the hit songs for the playlist because that's pretty much what Verzuz usually does when they have their matchups. I think.
For sure.
I think only a couple times they played like album cuts. Like I think when Ludacris versus Nelly, they played a couple album cuts from them.
Yeah. Okay, so do we want to move on to round two?
Yep, let's just take a vote first just to refresh everyone. Everyone who voted 50, hands up. Yep, and then everyone who voted T.I.
It's a tie.
Yep.
Hell yeah. That's actually a really good round then. All right, round two.
I'm excited for this one.
Is this Jay-Z and Eminem?
Eminem.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
One of you guys want to start this one?
I guess I'll start because I just went through this list. This is I have two matchups that ended up being this close. This is the closest my list gets, but Eminem I have with 12 hits and Jay-Z with 8. I just think this argument goes back to T.I. and 50 in the same way. Eminem had 3 very important albums at the beginning of his career before he started to fizzle out. And I'll be completely honest, I was actually looking forward to the Relapse tracks, but when it got to be Forever versus what was it? Forever versus
I think it was. Let's see what I got.
Was it Forever versus Paris?
I got Forever versus Run This Town because they're
big
posse cuts. Big.
So when it got to Run This Town versus Forever, I gave it to Run This Town. It's one of those tracks that I can hear, get excited about. I was so involved when it came out. That was one of my favorite songs on the radio, constantly looping. It argues to the 50 Cent versus T.I. Jay-Z is not somebody I look forward to for hits. He is somebody I'm looking forward to for deep album cuts. When it comes to Jay-Z, I also think he's brought on this sense of longevity and a second win period, just like T.I. You have 444 and the Carters. I think those are 2 extraordinary albums. I've never really been a Jay-Z fan besides the Blueprint 3 and the Carters and 444, but it speaks to Jay-Z's character that he's still going this strong at the age he is with so many years in the game. Because I'm pretty sure, doesn't he outdate Eminem still? Like, doesn't he go back further?
Hov started in the early 90s and his
Yeah,
first
okay.
96.
So yeah, it makes sense though. I think Eminem is somebody that's just had it his whole life when it comes to hits. It's almost at this point where it has become a meme. Like Eminem drops, and basically that week is sacred to stands because like it's just gonna chart number one no matter what happens. Is that an unfair advantage? I don't know. Maybe there is that many Eminem fans, and maybe it's the excitement, people wanting to shit on him. Personally, Eminem has 12, and most of those hits that he won were from his first 3 albums. Yeah, I think Eminem won in the stats, but Jay-Z, in my opinion, is making a very strong comeback. So I actually have a tie on this one, like in terms of thought process and like outside of the actual hit verses. I got to tie them because Eminem and Jay-Z have just been these 2 big prevalent figures in all of hip-hop for the last 20 to 30 years.
Definitely. Think I could go next.
Okay.
Just pretty much want to begin by saying how Jay-Z and Eminem are like the 2 biggest hit makers in hip-hop history.
Yeah.
Like both of their catalogs have cemented so many iconic songs and have topped the charts era after era.
Yeah.
And both their catalogs introduced so many people to the world of hip-hop, including myself. Yep. And they've influenced multiple generations of rappers going forward, both of them. So I want to also start by going into a few highlights from each of their catalogs. So Jay-Z had Reasonable Doubt in the beginning of his career, obviously one of the most influential rap albums of all time, released in 96, and it got plenty of critical acclaim right from the jump. But most of Jay-Z's iconic songs that we all know and love didn't happen until 1998 when he released Hard Knock Life Volume 2. That's his 3rd album. So that had the song Hard Knock Life, and then off the album after that was Big Pimpin', and I Just Wanna Love You came off the Dynasty. So Jay-Z making big hits didn't really happen until he was a couple albums in already. And then the Blueprint came, again, iconic album, one of the greatest albums of all time in my opinion. But that album, like you were saying, Austin, it's an excellent album with great deep cuts, but when it comes to hit songs, it didn't really have that much outside from Izzo. Izzo was pretty big, and then Take Over, the Nas diss when he was beefing with Nas, that was awesome. But then in 2003, Jay-Z announced he was retiring with a Black album, and that album had several hits on it.
Yeah.
Third on the Shoulder, 99 Problems, Change Clothes, all those songs were freaking huge. And the announcement of Jay-Z's retirement was just shook up the entire world of hip-hop. But then he came back just 3 years later in 2006 with Kingdom Come. And no one really remembers that album because, honestly, like, when I first heard it, I was disappointed. Like, this wasn't the exciting, larger-than-life Jay-Z I knew and loved as a kid. So Kingdom Come was a huge disappointment, and it only had one major song off it, Show Me What You Got.
Mm-hmm.
But then he had another comeback in 2009, the Blueprint 3, as you were saying, Austin. That album had so many great songs on it.
That is a very important album to hip-hop, in my opinion. It's something I don't honestly think we would have these large-scale, like, sense of grandeur tracks that we talk about in 2012 without Blueprint 3. I honestly don't think we have, like, that sense of royalty in music before Blueprint. Yeah,
and it wasn't until Blueprint 3 where Jay-Z had a #1 hit. Empire State of Mind was Jay-Z's first solo #1 hit. He was featured on a couple #1 hits prior to that, but it wasn't until 2009 where he finally reached #1. And then we go into Watch the Throne, which was excellent. Paris is an excellent track. And then Magna Carta Holy Grail dropped. The title track was pretty big with Justin Timberlake.
Yeah.
But aside from that, no one really talks about Magna Carta as like one of Jay-Z's great albums.
I will stand up for that album and firmly say that is probably my favorite Jay-Z album besides 444.
Oh, wow. Have you heard Reasonable Doubt or Blueprint 3 or Blueprint 1 yet?
Like I said, I've never been huge on Jay-Z, so a lot of his older stuff haven't really delved into. It's really Blueprint 3 and then forward that I got into Jay-Z. But yeah, I really like Magna Carta, Holy Grail. It's just the production on it is just so clean. It's so fancy. Like it took that sense of royalty in music, and once again, Jay-Z did his thing and elevated it. I just feel like every time Jay-Z stepped up to the microphone in that album, it was just like this presence, like this higher sense of self. It was just very important to me in my, in my delvings into hip hop.
That's awesome, man.
I agree with
when you got time, definitely check out Blueprint and Reasonable Doubt.
Oh, will do.
Yeah, Blueprint was the first album that really gave Kanye a spotlight because Kanye produced most of that album, and that was like his first time really stepping up into the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
That's where everybody knew, oh shit, this guy can really make beats.
Yeah.
And his career really took off.
Yeah, so as I was going with Jay-Z, as I said, like, he has a lot of iconic albums, and he had a couple really great hits here and there, but he has some holes in his discography that were forgotten about. Like, I didn't even mention In My Lifetime Volume 1, and I barely touched on Volume 3 in The Dynasty because those albums, they were pretty good, but they weren't that memorable. And that's why I'm choosing Eminem as my winner, because I had Eminem beating Jay-Z 11-9, a very close score.
Very close, yeah.
But I got to say Eminem's the winner because for every era of Eminem's career since the Slim Shady LP, it was memorable and impactful compared to Jay, who had a few of those eras that didn't make much of an impact. Like going into the Slim Shady LP, from the jump, My Name Is was massive on TRL and the radio. And then the Marshall Mathers LP, during its time, it was the fastest selling debut week for any hip-hop album when it came out. And Real Slim Shady was massive. That song was everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Then you definitely have the Eminem show with Without Me, Till I Collapse, Superman, all those songs.
Fun fact, I didn't give that round to Without Me.
Oh,
that was one of the rounds I actually gave to Jay-Z. I can't actually... What song was paired up with Without Me?
Let's see. I got Without Me against Takeover. You get it to Takeover?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, Takeover is a great diss track.
Oh, yeah. I just thought it left such a huge mark in history, and, like, you can't talk about Jay-Z without talking about Takeover. This felt like its influence was just something that needed to be spotlighted over, I guess you could say fresh but corny gimmicks.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you go into M's two biggest, well, they're not his biggest hits, but they're like his most iconic hits, Stan and Lose Yourself. Yeah. And you can't really say Jay-Z has a Stan or a Lose Yourself in his catalog. I mean, I guess you can make the case for 99 Problems or Hard Knock Life, but...
True. That's a very good point.
Even during M's down eras, the album...
Honestly, no, I want to challenge that. I think Stan can go toe-to-toe with the Story of OJ.
Story of OJ?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think Story of OJ is better than Stan. I will say it right here. I fucking love the Story of OJ. That is one of my favorite Jay-Z songs ever.
I agree. It's one of the best
songs.
And with how Stan has just become meme-ified over the years.
Exactly.
You know,
but how much...
It has a legacy, but it's a tainted one.
OJ left.
Yeah, it is a tainted legacy.
Like, it's an excellent song, but it doesn't have, like, that pop culture impact that Stan had.
I think it did.
I
think it did.
There's no way.
I think it did.
I wouldn't say it was of the same...
In 20 years, people are not going to talk about Story of OJ like we talk about Stan today. There's no way.
Maybe, because it marked a huge comeback for Jay-Z in my book, and I think people got really excited for anything Jay-Z was going to do after that.
In your book, but if you look at what everyone else, the general consensus.
Oh, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Is personally, I enjoy Story of OJ more, so I would say it's better than Stan. Like, that's just...
I would just agree off of my own preference as well. And look, this whole debate is very interesting because these are two artists who, came up at the same time in the same era of the mid-'90s. And basically, if you're someone like us, you grew up either listening to Jay-Z or Eminem, or in some cases both. For me, I really grew up listening to Jay-Z, just the hits that he had on the radio when I was young. My mom actually bought the Blueprint 3 CD when it came out. and played it in the house, and that was kind of a breakthrough point of me getting into hip hop on a more serious level, because I never heard a record quite like that, and to hear something like Jay-Z when I was at that point, I believe 9 or 10 years old, really shaped my perspective. But look, we could talk about hits and things like that, but there's iconic songs on just about every Jay-Z album, and you do go back to the original stuff like Reasonable Doubt, and you have songs like The Evils or Politics as Usual, Can't Knock the Hustle, Dead Presidents 2. I mean, these aren't radio hits, but these are songs that are classic in the landscape of hip hop. These are songs that people always cite when they talk about great early Jay-Z works. Now, when you get through the Volume series and the Dynasty, like Bosch said, not as memorable, not as impactful, but definitely sprinkles of great tracks through that. And then, getting into the Blueprint, again, not a ton of radio hits, but The Ruler's Back. The song's in 2K14. That song I've heard that all over. Takeover, of course, iconic diss track. Izzo, Girls, 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 Jigga. I mean, Song Cry. That's everybody's, like, going back to being a kid, everybody would always talk about how Song Cry was just the greatest Jay-Z song. And then how it leads into All I Need, and then Renegade. I mean, it's basically a 10. It's one of the best hip-hop albums of all time. Don't forget Ain't No Love, In the Heart of the City. That's one of my favorite hip-hop songs ever. Right?
That was beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was an album that I think, especially in the early 2000s, where New York hip hop and hip hop in general were going, kind of in these sporadic different directions, like a tree almost. And Jay-Z and Kanye kind of really anchored things with that record, and kind of, started a new avenue that both served both of them well, I think, especially Kanye later on. And then, things like Blueprint 2, not very relevant. Black Album, great, full of classics. King whatever was very forgettable, especially for being a comeback album, but he was at least able to bounce back the following year with American Gangster, an album that
American Gangster was very underrated.
I think it is one of the more underrated Jay-Z albums. And you get from there to Blueprint 3 again. That's, like I said, that was an intro for me, and kind of going beyond that, kind of like what Austin said, I think that's a very well produced, well polished, pop rap Jay-Z album. I think if I were to compare Blueprint 3 to Magna Carta Holy Grail, I would definitely go with Blueprint 3. That being said, I agree with all the points Austin made about Magna Carta Holy Grail. I feel like that album is kind of a great sense of Jay-Z being in his own little world.
Can I make a comparison? Magna Carta Holy Grail is literally, like, when I throw it on, I think of like this feeling of sipping fine wine. Like that's what I get from Jay-Z on that album.
To me, it's him just kind of removing himself from basic society and just kind of, laughing at all of us all.
Yeah.
But in a very entertaining sense.
That's what people did for Watch the Throne. Like, everything you guys are describing about Magna Carta is how I feel about Watch the Throne.
But that was what I was going to get into as well with Watch the Throne. Another album that I was able to cop on CD when it came out, and that was a couple years later. I was a little older, now in my preteen years, and that album just blew me away with its forward-thinking production at the time, and just how aggressive and just hard that record goes. And the chemistry between Jay and Kanye, I think, was at its best at that point. That seemed to be the peak of their friendship. They just really went back and forth, especially on certain songs like Gotta Have It and Who Gonna Stop Me, where they just go back and forth and really just tear into every song. This is another album that I would almost say is perfect, because I never found any songs to be, skippable when I was a kid. I thought every song was, had something to offer, or was just a great banger. And over the years, it's definitely aged to, different effects, but I really still enjoy it a lot. And as far as everything goes with the quality there, it's definitely not to the point of something like 444, which really was a massive comeback, and him linking with No ID to come up with yet another new sound in the midst of a situation where, his life was kind of at stake and in jeopardy in a way, and everything that he knew of it. And that's what I think kind of sets Jay-Z apart from an artist like Eminem. His ability to kind of record his introspective and what he's going through and respond to kind of personal crisis through music with an album like 444, I think is a lot better than something like a Recovery or any of the albums that Eminem has really made since then. But what I do give Eminem is the legacy that he created with those powerful, legendary, just very heavy albums of those first three with Slim Shady, Marshall Mathers, and Eminem Show, that really, I think, in its own way, kind of changed how we look at hip hop in a sense of basically how you can approach ways of rhyming and approaching certain rhyme schemes, how you can describe certain scenes and scenarios with that, and that flow and command that Eminem has in that erratic, personality and delivery that he has. It was something that had never been done, and really hasn't been done kind of since. And Eminem is just that unique talent that immediately came on the scene and made that impact and was controversial and kind of brought hip hop to white families in a way that was, going almost against the grain. And I think, he deserves credit for that kind of expansion and in a way creating his own avenue for people that he influenced to kind of form a new type of hip hop. One, a type I'm not particularly big on, the Joyner Lucases and the Tokens and those kinds of rappers, not a big fan, but there's definitely some good that has come of it. And Eminem through his career has definitely had elite moments, definitely had incredible songs and very well weighted, emotional songs. I think before, the whole stigma of, Eminem being just an angry, washed-up old man, I think he was actually very good and well able to appeal to emotion, especially with songs on the Eminem Show, particularly. And I think the fact that he just couldn't really hang on to that and really have that same longevity or the ability to come back the way Jay-Z did, to me really makes him more of a figment of the 2000s, whereas I can look at Jay-Z and say that he has really touched 3 decades of my life and had an album for most parts of it that, meant something to me, whereas Eminem has most of his records that meant something to me when I was a kid. And that has a standing and a legacy, but through all of that, I ultimately have to give it to Jay-Z. And my matchups were 16-4 in favor of him. So.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
16-4 in favor of Jay-Z?
Yes. Yeah.
That's like completely opposite for me and Bosch. Damn.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm trying to focus mainly on hit songs is because that's what Verzuz kind of does. But if we're going into albums, I definitely agree with you, Nick. Jay-Z has more albums that have stood the test of time and aged more gracefully than Eminem's albums. The misses in Jay-Z's catalog were forgettable, but the misses in Eminem's catalog were abysmal.
Yeah.
Remember,
that's another thing I'd also like to give Eminem is even when he's totally swung and missed, it's always been a moment. It's always been something to talk about or be entertained or laugh at or
Yeah. Every time you see him show up, it's a discussion piece.
Exactly. And that's not something that every artist can do, especially somebody who is as late into his career and has gone on for so many years at this point as being kind of an artist you take less than serious. So, give him props for doing that. And, with recent stuff like even Music to Be Murdered By, I mean, he's tried to make some effort to give a good.
I think we're going to get there. I think he's making strides. He might drop an album that is the same grace as he used to have, but the more and more he fills these albums with filler, it's just getting less and less to that point. I think Eminem needs to take out of Kanye's book and release something that's 7 to 10 tracks, keep it real concise, maybe do a concept album, or maybe just go fully political like he did on the Eminem Show. I mean, we've seen him go political in the last few years, but not to an esteem that was regarded as highly when he was doing it on the Eminem Show. I just think it's so weird to have Eminem fizzle out like this during the Donald Trump era.
Yeah, it's not the same. Like doesn't. He went after George Bush, especially on Encore too, like the song Mosh. He hasn't really done anything like that about Trump. I mean,
he did the BET
little
freestyle, and that was
that's
bad.
The song on Revival with Alicia Keys was about Trump, and that was just kind of corny.
Yeah, I hated that, dude. I wish that album was never released, but the score I had, actually, looking at the tracks, I had 12 for Eminem and 8 for Jay-Z.
Oh, we tied.
Boy.
We got the same exact outcome.
No, listen.
9 and 11.
I don't know who I would pick for a winner, though, because I can recognize how much Jay-Z has done for the genre and also how much Eminem has done for the genre. And if you look at early albums in Jay-Z's career, like you guys were saying, that have those Kanye beats on it, so that kind of brought Kanye into the limelight too and set up the opportunity for him to drop albums in the future working with Jay-Z. But throughout his career, Jay-Z has been more consistent than Eminem. But I think the high points of Eminem are better than the high points of Jay-Z, personally. But based on the tracks, I do give it to just solely based on the tracks. But you could, I guess you could make the argument that I could tie them, but I did choose Eminem. Mostly for the reason I did grow up listening to Eminem more, but as a child, it was like you knew who 50 Cent was, you knew who Jay-Z was, you knew who Eminem was. So it was really like, I remember them being like the 3 biggest artists of hip-hop when I was a kid. So I'm confident with going with Eminem just because he's had a bigger impact on me personally than Jay-Z, but I can still appreciate how consistent he's been, especially later in his career, like you said, Austin.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the Carters. I'm not actually a big Beyonce fan, but I do like that album just because I don't remember which album you were talking about, but you said it gave you the sense of like sipping fine wine.
Oh, Magna Carta Holy Grail. That's the one with Holy Grail with Justin Timberlake. Fuck With Me, You Know I Got It with Rick Ross. Isn't there a song with Andre 3000 or is it Frank Ocean? I can't remember.
Ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the vibe I kind of get from the Carters. Like, I don't know if you saw the video they released.
Carters is just the reconciliation of Jay-Z and Beyonce, which is nice.
Like that whole like 444, and then that whole album after was like perfect,
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you guys saw the video they shot for that album, but it was like ridiculous how much luxurious shit was in it. It was filmed.
Bro.
It was done really well. I liked how they did that aesthetic to it. So.
I think when we get to Beyonce versus Rihanna, like that also translates there. Like Beyonce has also done that same thing you're talking about, the Carter's visuals. I don't know if you watched what was it? Is it Black is King? Or what was it called? It was on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
Black is King. The visuals in that and the amount of effort and like how much like the level of decadence that is put into the production of that. I believe it was a movie. I can't remember if it was a series or a movie, but if it was it's such a piece of like visual cinema that it's one of those things where you just got to put headphones in and just zone out to it and just enjoy it. It's I think Jay-Z and Beyonce carry this like this higher self with them everywhere they go when it comes to their music.
I also wanted to say something about the song Renegade, which wasn't on the playlist, but it has Eminem and Jay-Z.
Yeah, I was curious about that. We could have done that, couldn't we?
But I wanted to say, like, I pick Eminem.
On it, like, what would you put that against?
But they're like the way I was thinking is like we're comparing artists, which one we prefer. And that song to me, like I listened to that song and I'm like, Eminem is way better on this particular track, in my opinion. But that's just me.
Renegade versus Toy Soldiers.
That's a good one.
Renegade.
They're both diss tracks. I mean, it goes to Renegade, but like it's a good.
They're both. Soldiers is good, but Renegade is way better.
Yeah. Or Haley's Revenge. I don't know if that's officially released, but
I don't think I've heard that one.
Haley's Revenge is pretty good. I'm pretty sure that's an Eminem diss, right, Bosh?
Yeah, that was Eminem dissing Ja Rule because
Ja
Rule mentioned Haley on it.
Actually, yeah, you know what? I have heard that one.
Yo, Renegade and Go to Sleep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that would have went well because you got DMX on there.
Was Renegade wasn't a diss track, though.
Kind of, wasn't
he dissing Benzino on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not on Renegade. he was dissing Benzino on Nail in the Coffin and a few other ones.
Okay, I get Renegade and Takeover mixed up sometimes. That could be my fault.
Yeah.
But
I don't
still,
know.
Renegade versus Go to Sleep would have been fun.
I don't know, because I thought that he was dissing somebody on M's verse. I thought he was dissing somebody on Renegade.
I think he was
I'll look
going
into
after his critics.
Yeah, like maybe, but because I remember that whole beef with the Source and shit happened, but I don't know if that's after or before.
That was a little bit after Renegade came out. Renegade was 2001. The whole Source thing kind of took place in like 2003, 2004-ish.
Oh, and I also like to throw one more thing in about Jay-Z is I really appreciate what he did with Linkin Park and how he kind of bridged the gap between two genres. I don't think Eminem really did something like that, and I do have to give Jay-Z credit for that because it's a big thing for rap and rock to mix like that. And I actually kind of like it. I thought it was pretty decent. So
Yeah, that's a good
I mainly base my decision off like a hit for hit battle. Like I just put 20 of Gemini and 20 of Jay-Z's. Like Eminem's hits have a little more longevity than Jay-Z's hits. So, but when we're talking albums, Jay-Z definitely has a lot more albums than Eminem that have impacted hip hop as a whole. And personally, my life, like I grew up with both of them. Like around 2003, Jay-Z and Eminem were two of the first rappers that I really got into. So even though I would pick Eminem over Jay-Z in like a hit-for-hit battle, because more of Eminem's hits have more longevity than Jay-Z's hits personally, but when I was a kid, both of them were like two of the first rappers I really got into to the point where I'm like, I need all their albums. I started out with the Black Album and Encore because it was around 2004 when I really got into both of them. So Black Album and Encore were my starting on point for both of them. And just the way both of them are able to flow and tell stories really captivated me. Like no other artist I've heard at the time, even though I was very young and I barely heard any other hip hop at the time. But just the way they were able to like craft stories and talk about their lives, and the way Jay-Z made everything seem larger than life, and the way Eminem was able to do that as well is what really caught my attention. And both of them just have a unique presence to them that I haven't heard in any other artist before. So that's what really got me hooked, and to the point where I had to collect both their entire discographies. And the Eminem Show was definitely my personal favorite Eminem album because that had a lot of emotional moments that really hit me, like Haley's song, like one of you mentioned, and a lot of songs like Till I Collapse that made me feel like I'm ready to take on the world. And that it made me feel like a larger-than-life figure. And then Jay-Z had a lot of that on the Black Album, too, with songs like Dirt Off Your Shoulder and 99 Problems. And so, yeah, both artists were, like, monumental in forming my taste in hip-hop in general. So I got to give it up to both of them. But at the end of the day, when you look at both of their hit catalogs, a lot more of Eminem's hits are still being played today than a lot of those older Jay-Z hits that kind of got buried with time, like the ones that came off of Volume 1 and whatnot. But I'm not dissing Jay-Z at all. Like, Reasonable Doubt and The Blueprint are two of the greatest albums of all time. But you could also say the same about Eminem's first three albums. So at the end of the day, that's why I'm giving it to Eminem. Okay, did it get all?
Everything went through.
All
right. So do we want to transition to the next verses?
Yeah, let's do a final vote first.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, was that one a tie? Because I also picked Eminem for that one.
All right, so you're gonna have to cut this a lot.
No, it's fine. All right, so Vash, you wanna determine the vote?
Yep. So hands up for Eminem real quick, and then hands up for Jay-Z.
I have to. I Dude, the longevity Jay-Z has been able to pull off and the way he's just outshined Eminem in the last few years.
Tie on our hands.
Yep. Tied again.
All right. So we're going to go on to the next verses, which is Bosch.
Next one is Beyonce versus Rihanna.
All right. Beyonce versus Rihanna. Who
Yeah.
wants to go first on this one? I feel like Bosch has the most to say on this, to be honest.
Oh, I definitely have plenty to say.
All right. I will let Bosch go.
Sounds good. So it's pretty easy to say that both Beyonce and Rihanna are like the two most influential female artists of the 21st century. Both of them have been making chart-topping, iconic songs since the beginning of their careers, and both have remained relevant to this very day. I'd probably say the 2000s was the time where both of them were the most dominant, and as for time periods after the 2000s, Beyonce, I'd say in the late 90s with Destiny's Child, she was mass. And then 2016 happened, a comeback year for both artists, where they both released like their most critically acclaimed projects, Lemonade and Anti. Beyonce's head catalog stretches all the way back to the 90s with Destiny's Child, like I was saying, and every single that group released was massive as well. Like you had Say My Name and Independent Woman and Survivor. All those songs have been etched in history and still get played today many a times. And then when she went solo, she continued this massive momentum. And like from her debut album, she had Crazy in Love with Jay-Z.
Audio.
That was like the biggest song in the world when it came out.
It just
And
lagged
both were massive
terribly.
as well, but all right, like where did it start lagging?
I believe it was when you're talking about the debut album from Beyonce, and you're talking about Destiny Child's like huge hits back then.
Yeah, definitely. So those Destiny's Child hits were monumental. Like Destiny's Child pretty much picked off where TLC left off. And then when Beyonce went solo, she continued that massive momentum with Crazy in Love, the first huge single from her debut album, Dangerously in Love. But that album also had a lot of other hits like Naughty Girl and Me, Myself, and I. Those ones don't really get played that much anymore. And those ones people don't really talk about as much as they talk about Crazy in Love. Her second album, B-Day, was probably my personal favorite. That had Deja Vu and like Irreplaceable, of course, was massive. But yet again, most people only really bring up Irreplaceable from that album. It was an excellent album, but it's not really one people remember. And then in 2008, she had I Am Sasha Fierce. Single Ladies came out, and according to some, that's the greatest music video of all time. But other singles from that album, like Halo and Sweet Dreams, those kind of like blended in with the rest of pop music at the time. Like Halo's a great little song, but there are a lot of songs that sounded just like it that came out back in the day. So even though Beyonce had a lot of those massive hits in some of her albums, she had a few that kind of got lost in time, but that some people still do remember. And then with her fourth album, number 4, Run the World, was big, but the other songs on that album didn't really get discussed that much. But I still think 4 is a very underrated album. That had Love on Top and Countdown on it. Those songs are freaking fantastic. And
I remember Countdown. That was a great song.
Yeah, that is.
I wish people talked about those more, but they just don't. And
Yeah.
then Beyonce, and then with Self-Titled and Lemonade, I'm grouping those albums together because they kind of marked a turning point in Beyonce's career, where she focused less on hit singles and more on making excellent full bodies of work that'll be remembered for time periods to come. Self-Titled by Beyonce was iconic because that was like the first surprise release to ever really come out. Like she kind of set the trend for surprise releases, and now every artist does it nowadays.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, Lemonade was like
Every round that Lemonade was involved in this versus, I definitely gave it to her. Lemonade is one of my favorite pop, like female pop albums of all time. You can even call it that.
I think Lemonade and Anti go neck and neck.
Oh yeah, neck and neck. It's so close. Like it was kind of funny because most of the Lemonade stuff got paired up with Anti, and honestly, I love Anti. I've seen Rihanna perform Anti almost entirely live, and I have a huge connection to that album. But like Lemonade, in terms of music quality, is just so much higher.
Really well produced. I mean, they both are though. They both have stood up really well over the past 4 years or so.
I actually don't know if you guys saw this. Jack White performed his own version of the song that he did with Beyonce on that album. What is it? Don't Hurt Yourself.
Oh shit!
He did his own version, like a solo version on SNL, like 2 weeks ago. Dude, one of the best live performances I've seen from him in a long time.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I definitely recommend you guys check that out. His vocals on that song are fantastic. I can definitely see his influence on the track now for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Going back to Beyonce, her hit catalog started out like really strong, but she has a few spots in her discography that kind of got lost in time. So that's why I'm picking Rihanna as my winner for this round, because all throughout Rihanna's career, she had like no down periods at all. Every single album she released was jam-packed with anthems that still get played on the radio today. People are still talking about, like, from the jump, she had Ponder Replay off her first album, and then off A Girl Like Me that had SOS, Unfaithful, and Weird and Crime. All of those are such great songs. And then with Good Girl Gone Bad, her third album, that's when she solidified herself as one of the biggest pop stars in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Every song from that album was a smash.
And then wasn't Rated R after that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rated R just sealed the deal officially for me, especially.
Yeah, for me it was Good Girl Gone Bad because that album had like freaking Umbrella and Take a Bow, Disturbia.
I forgot Take a Bow was on that album. Oh yeah, good point.
I love that song so much.
Same. Umbrella especially too. I remember hearing that song for the first time in like 3rd grade, I think.
Yeah. That's a great.
I remember I heard that for the first time at summer camp when we were going to the pool, and it fit perfectly with the situation. So
It does. It's
whenever I listen to that song, I get memories of that summer.
Yeah. You guys are gonna disagree with my decision.
Really?
I got a little more, guys. I'm not done yet. So then Loud came, and that album was pretty much the album, if Good Girl Gone Bad was the album that made her amongst the biggest pop stars in the world, Loud was the album that made her like the freaking queen, because that album had so many stuff on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that had Only Girl, What's My Name with Drake, S&M. S&M came out of nowhere. Like, no one was expecting that kind of song from Rihanna.
Oh, yeah, especially at the time, back when everything was still censored.
Yep.
Definitely. And then that entire run of hers from 2010 all the way to 2012, she had Loud and then Talk That Talk and then Unapologetic all in a row. Every single one of that album had so many anthems on it. And every single song of those albums, like, they still hold up today. And then she had that break for 4 years, kind of like Beyonce did. But then when she came back with Anti, she like reinvented her sound completely. The way she fused dance hall with trap on that album, it was like when I heard that for the first time, it was amazing. Like I kind of expected Rihanna would do something like that, but it was still kind of out of left field with me.
Yeah.
And Anti, I go back to that a little more than I do Lemonade.
It's like a Western and blues type influenced album too, which was just really surprising for her to attempt.
Definitely. So at the end, Beyonce, while she has so many hits that I go back to, so many that I remember, she has a lot that I kind of forgot about over time. And personally, I just listen to a lot more Rihanna than I do Beyonce. And like ever since I discovered Rihanna as a kid, I thought she was amazing. Like she has a voice that was made for pop music.
Oh, yeah.
Everything about her, I just love. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, Robin, Rihanna, Fenty, will you be my only girl in the world? I had to do that.
That was good.
Caught us all off guard.
Okay, now
my God.
Are you done? No?
I'm done now.
Okay, I'll go. So my score was 19-1. I want you
Whoa.
to 19-1.
And who had 19?
Not Beyonce.
Yeah, we can't post this video now. Bayhive's gonna cancel you on Twitter.
I would just
2 episodes in, the show's canceled.
I've always okay. Listen, I've always been more partial. I've never really enjoyed Beyonce ever, to be honest with you. The only song I actually picked over the Rihanna song was '03 Bonnie and Clyde with JC, because I think Love the Way You Lie is honestly just, it's been so overplayed at this point, and I just don't like the song anymore. And I do think '03 Bonnie and Clyde is a better song. But in general, I would say Anti is probably one of the best pop albums, or whatever you want to call it, I've ever heard. I think Love on the Brain is probably one of the best songs of the last 10 years. And I like, out of rappers I've heard, I prefer Rihanna more on those songs than I do Beyonce. I just think overall she's a better artist. I enjoy Rihanna's videos better. I just think she's an overall better artist. I enjoy her more. I don't really have much to say other than that I pick Rihanna, and it's 19-1. So.
All right, I got some thoughts on this. Rihanna and Beyonce ended up being my closest next to Jay-Z and Eminem. I got Rihanna at 12 and Beyonce at 8.
Oh, wow.
Like I said, Beyonce on Lemonade, any track off Lemonade is going to cancel out any Rihanna track for me. I think Beyonce really stepped the bar up for pop music and herself essentially as a public figure with Lemonade. I think Formation is an excellent track. I think it's one of the best pop tracks. Like I say how Todd's saying Love on the Brain is one of the best in the last decade. I think Formation and Don't Hurt Yourself are two of the best pop songs of the last decade. That being said, Rihanna's longevity and her need to constantly make hits and her success in doing so and almost transcending the landscape of pop at the time when she goes at it is probably what makes her stand out on top in terms of my stats. When it comes to Beyonce, I'm going to go higher than the stats again. I'm going to bring in the discussion we were having with Jay-Z. When it comes to visuals and cultural impact nowadays, I think Rihanna is missing. She has become, I believe, more of a businesswoman than a musician, as she's selling makeup and clothing. And Beyonce has been at the forefront of a lot of the social issues that are going on. She released Black is King, which is a stunning visual. She was one of the biggest hands behind The Lion King, which, say what you want about it, I actually really like this interpretation of it. I thought the music was great. I think Beyonce has a great ear for new talent and assembling an all-star cast when she wants to. Even the Lion King album that came out after that doesn't have the music from the actual movie was pretty spectacular, and its African roots and bringing something back to her own people. It's an even trade-off with Rihanna and Beyonce. I want to put them at a tie, but as of the last few years, I got to give overall influence and as an artist to Beyonce because she's just stepped the bar up so much in the last 5 years. But in hits, Rihanna sweeps the board almost.
Agreed. I'd also like to say something. Just never mind. I'll get it in at the end. Just go next. It's fine.
All right.
You're good, Todd.
No, it's all right. Go ahead. I want him to go.
Who? Nick or Bosch?
Whoever is going next, go ahead.
Oh, Nick.
My turn. Well, yeah. I think that the thing with me and Beyonce is the whole magnitude of her presence and her stardom that she's carried with her entire career, to me, has not leveled to as much quality work and projects and things that I would really want and really get a lot out of as I have with somebody like Rihanna. With Beyonce, other than Lemonade, there aren't really any full albums of hers that I really am that into, that I really spend a lot of time listening to. And with Rihanna, I'm really a big fan of Anti. I really like Good Girl Gone Bad. Both of those are probably my favorite female pop albums of all time, of the highest. And I just think I've always preferred Rihanna just because of the simplicity of her voice and how catchy she is and how good she is at writing songs and making hit after hit. That being said, all of this being said, this was actually a close match for me. In fact, it was tied 10 apiece. And I think as far as Beyonce goes with making hits, she really did dominate the 2000s, both the early, middle, and later parts. And I think that was really her time to shine. I think she had a lot of really good records that I remember fondly from a kid of that time. And I think Rihanna also emerged right around the same time and had a lot of also early hits that I admired. But the 2000s to me really belonged to Beyonce, whereas I think the 2010s were really to Rihanna with that huge run, as Bosch was breaking down earlier, between 2010 and 12. I mean, I remember those years. Every other week, there would be a new Rihanna song on the radio or just being played somewhere, and it would always be pretty good. I mean, for what it is, being a top 40 radio hit of the era, it would always be pretty catchy, pretty fun, something refreshing to hear, especially compared to certain other things that were played at the time. So I definitely think that both have had their time and their prime as hit makers. And I think they both have developed into artists that can make good albums and something with a runtime that makes a statement and will be remembered. But even then, I would say I still give it to Rihanna because I know a lot of my friends who still talk about Anti, just how, forward thinking the production is, the way it mixes pop and dance hall and just has all this down tempo trap, and it's just an album that really defines the mid 2010s and really elevates, I think, pop music in a way that I would say even Lemonade does, because I think Lemonade, although it is also very well produced and performed and a very cohesive project, I think its production more succumbs to the trends of the time, and to me sounds a bit more dated, whereas Anti kind of created its own lane and sound, which to me will pretty much immortalize it because it will never really sound dated as a result. And as I said earlier, I also prefer Rihanna as a rapper over Beyonce. But yeah, both have had incredible legacies. Beyonce is absolutely massive. There's no denying that. There's no denying what she does for Black women and Black culture in America, especially and throughout the world. But, Rihanna has just always been a really good songwriter and an album maker to me. And just the longevity that she has had with that, and, the youthfulness that she's retained in her music, I go with her.
All right. So do we want to do a final vote?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I just prefer Rihanna's style more than Beyonce. Like I'm not trying to diss Beyonce. I just prefer Rihanna.
No,
good cover for when the Bayhive comes after you.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not gonna be
My
honest.
Twitter will be taken down.
She's had so many great songs and even a few great albums. Like I love B-Day, I love Lemonade, I love Self-Titled, but Rihanna had so many more albums and songs that I keep coming back to over and over again. Like
All
Love
right.
still holds up today. Good Girl Gone Bad still holds up today. Anti is, of course, freaking amazing.
Oh yeah, Anti is
Overall.
solidified as a classic.
So yeah.
All right, so let's take a vote. Rihanna, Beyonce.
Oh, I thought you picked Beyonce.
Yeah, I thought you did too. I was like, huh?
I'm gonna go off the hits on this one because like the more I think of Rihanna, the more I'm thinking, the deeper cuts as well, and some of the hits that were left off of here. I kind of forgot about her tracks where she features more as a rapper than a singer as well. So in the end, I really do got to give it to Rihanna. And Nick's point about her making a landscape for herself in Anti and Lemonade kind of already becoming dated due to the trends of like alternative music at the time, I definitely do got to say that he convinced me to switch to Rihanna at the very last second.
I also think Rihanna is a bit more versatile in her style. I mean, we've seen her do great pop music. She's done house, she's done trap, she's done rap, she's done club stuff, she's done ballads, she's done pretty much everything. And Beyonce definitely has tremendous talent, especially in her voice. But I've never seen her as being as playful or willing to push the boundaries as someone like Rihanna has. And Rihanna, to me, does it almost instinctually.
Yeah.
I've never read her as an artist who has tried to do these things. And that's what makes her so appealing, I think, is just that sincerity and her personality that really just radiates in her music and her performances.
Definitely. Like,
Yeah,
Beyonce's first 3 albums, like, you could pretty much put them all together and you wouldn't really be able to differentiate each one from each other sonically, but every one of Rihanna's albums has a different sound.
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Adding on what you said about her having more versatile thing, I don't know if you guys, she did that song with Slash from Guns N' Roses too.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
I forget what album it was on, but I remember her doing that.
And she did that Tame Impala cover that was pretty good on Anti.
Oh, yeah. Less I know the. No, wait. It was.
It was. Yeah.
The less I know, the better, isn't it?
No, it was the closing track.
Let me check this real quick.
I can't remember the name of it. How do I not know this? I know this album so well.
It was Same Old Mistakes.
Yeah.
The one that went.
Oh, it was the subtitle album, Rockstar 101 Slash.
All right, so let's move on to our next one. We got Kanye versus Lil Wayne. I think Todd should start on this one, to be honest. I'm interested on his thoughts.
Yeah. I don't really have like a number for what tracks I picked, but I picked Kanye, of course. I think the impact that Kanye's, you look at College Dropout through his last run he did in 2018 is like, where is there a bad album in there that Kanye's released? I don't think there is one. I don't think he's ever really had a bad album, maybe besides
Jesus is King,
which, take that for what it is. But that's like a transition period, in my opinion. But I look at Kanye's. I just prefer the beats more. I think he's more versatile as an artist than Lil Wayne is, honestly. If you look at what Kanye did with hip hop with 808s and Heartbreak. But you could also say we wouldn't have that without Lil Wayne too, So that's where you run into a bit of an issue with who you could pick. I just chose Kanye mostly because I grew up more listening to him than Lil Wayne. I think he has a better discography if you take each album and look at it. Like I honestly don't enjoy Lil Wayne's last 2 albums besides maybe a few tracks. Like I liked Mona Lisa with Kendrick that he had. But Funeral, I guess you could say I like the Griselda features, but I feel like it's kind of become like Eminem. Like these albums are just so long and they're filled with songs, Like how many songs are on that album? Like 20 songs or something like that?
Yeah.
Almost 30 something.
Yeah, almost 30 songs. And it's like, that's cool if like you're a diehard Wayne fan, but I'm not really. So like Austin said earlier when we were talking about Eminem, like I feel like it's better if you release a shorter album, like between 7 and 10 tracks, because that's less room for filler, more room for a fan maybe that's not into the artist. They see that album, they're gonna more likely to listen to it because there's not 100 tracks on it.
Yeah.
But overall, Kanye I think has done more for culture in general too, and the genre of music of hip hop, because he's been working. He does this thing where he'll take a newer artist and he'll work with them to boost himself. If you look at the stuff he did with 6ix9ine, Lil Pump, like those are new rappers that he's working with. If you like it or not, that's whatever. Kanye's still getting his name out there. He's getting a track out that younger artists and younger people are listening to. So that's how I think he kind of stays relevant.
I mean, Lil Wayne's doing the same thing though.
Yeah,
Lil Wayne killed some great verses the past couple years on other people's songs.
Oh,
yeah,
I
Lil Wayne's
definitely
been
think
more in
he's
touch with the younger audience and younger rappers more than I think Kanye has, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that too, honestly. I mean,
Wow.
even
I don't know.
Because he's got Little Baby and Ellie Chopper features, and I don't know, he's just out the ass in the last 2 years as he's been featuring on anybody.
When I think of Kanye, I think of him like as an artist is like everything he does is art, whereas Wayne I just look at as like an MC, you know. So to me, I'm always more likely to go towards the person that's more about the presentation of the art and stuff.
Yeah, that's what drives my argument for picking Kanye in this too. Is he's just more of a rounded artist than Wayne is. I think Wayne uses a lot of filler.
Yeah, like he does so much for the culture, I believe. And I'm not saying Lil Wayne hasn't. He definitely has, but I just think overall Kanye is a way better artist, and his collaborations are way, way better too. I think what is Watch the Throne? Like that's one of the best albums ever in hip hop ever. So Kanye wins that for me.
I think as far as who's impacted the culture, I would say both have made nearly equal contributions in their own way. Because if you look at what Lil Wayne has done, I mean, he uplifted the South and New Orleans and the whole street and underground, street scene, kind of living through that crunk era of hip hop and kind of transcending it and bringing all kinds of artists along with him, and through Young Money and Cash Money being in its prime at that time. I just think that I think he really did something for, sorry, my mind is going crazy, but basically what I'm saying is I feel like Lil Wayne invented a side of hip hop with the whole mixtape, with the whole, what eventually became, More Intense Records, drill records, things like that, just that whole underworld scene of street hip hop that I think has kind of blossomed into such a bigger thing now with artists like NBA Youngboy and guys like that who are, ultimately influenced by Lil Wayne. Whereas Kanye has both influenced artists with his performances, but also with his production, with, just how different he approached sampling and chopping samples and arranging songs early in his career, and how that evolved to more electronic based things and 808s, how influential that was, how big of a statement My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy was, and how that sort of elevated just how massive a statement a hip hop album could make. And then just everything that he's made, even with Yeezus and, the contributions he's made the past 7 years since. I really feel like Kanye has redefined numerous times within his reign of what hip hop can be, whereas Lil Wayne just basically invented a whole new side of it that would have eventually been found one way or the other. So I think they both have tremendous legacies of just expanding the culture and rethinking what we can do. But all that being said, I think Kanye is the superior musician and rapper and songwriter and album and really everything. I mean, hit for hit here, I had him 18-2, just a complete landslide. Yeah. And the thing with me is Lil Wayne has always had his moments and good songs, and both of them are instantly a presence on whatever track they're on. That's a fact. That's undisputable. They're probably bigger than just about any other artist you could say that of. And that's, I think, something that shouldn't be overlooked, because they both can pretty much command attention through doing, whatever. Lil Wayne is arguably the king of just corny, great, ridiculous, funny punchlines. Kanye just does outlandish this song he had last week is an example of just Kanye not giving a fuck. And that's the thing that makes both of them great to me, is they're just both artists that come from a very specific background. They know who they are, and they just kind of do their thing, and they don't really worry too much about public perception, and they, redefine boundaries. I just think that Kanye is just more talented. And for me, a full Lil Wayne album has always been a hard sell. I've never been into his full length albums. I really just think he's a good singles artist and great as a feature up to this day. I think he's good on other people's songs, but I'm not a huge fan of Lil Wayne's own music, even though I did grow up with him in the late 2000s, and the Carter 3 is something that I think a lot of us remember from that time. But ultimately, Kanye all the way for me. That's my favorite, probably, artist in history.
Yeah, I agree with Nick in a very large sense. Mine wasn't as big as a landslide. I have 13 for Kanye, 7 for Wayne. just because I think when Wayne did have a hit back off the Carter 3, like it deserves recognition.
Oh yeah,
I also mentioned when we were tallying these up that My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy doesn't really win a lot of those rounds for me. I love the album when it came out. I love the impact it had, but personally, I have overplayed it. I've listened to it too much, and that album's just been basically shoved on your throat since it came out. I think Wayne is just, I wanted to give him an underdog chance in this.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give him the vote of the song I just enjoyed more and had more fun with. And that's what I go to Wayne for, is fun. As of recently, I mean, going to Kanye is fun, but going to Lil Wayne recently has become more serious, and he's kind of getting back on the wagon with what he used to be. But I think Wayne is too far gone at this point. I don't think we're going to get a classic project out of Wayne anytime soon. That being said, I think Kanye is on the downward spiral as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, that could always do a 180 because nobody really knows what's going on with Kanye. Whereas Lil
Wash
Wayne's
Us in the
trajectory.
Blood, and I had hope again.
What was that?
You dropped Wash Us in the Blood with Travis, and I had hope again.
Yeah, like I have hope with that. I like Ego Death. I like the new song with Ty Dolla $ign, but
Kanye will always.
is it going to be a classic? That's debatable. For the first time ever, Kanye dropped an album that wasn't going to be considered a classic with Jesus is King. So he kind of lost that status, and now it's kind of up in the air. I mean, it'll be a classic meme album, and we'll come back to it, and we'll laugh at it. But as far as another College Dropout or another Yeezus or another Life is Pablo, I think that's up in the air right now, as well as Kanye's plans for his next album.
Yeah.
But yeah, when Wayne really does want to have fun and he gets a good track and a good ensemble of people together, I think he really does excel. That being said, I got to give it to Kanye all the way around, just because, like Todd was saying, Kanye just brings this sense of artistry. And in the last few rounds, I've kind of brought this up. If you can bring this sense of grandeur and artistry and royalty to your music, I vibe with it more, because it's you feeling yourself and you're getting into the mood that you have to be, where nobody can touch you and nobody can really reach your level.
I think it's also cool when you think of their humble beginnings, either of them, and then you see how far they've climbed through just every rank of pop and really taken it to the helm, and you see how they've now impacted the landscape so much, and then brought on other huge artists. Lil Wayne bringing in Drake, the artist of the 2010s, Kanye bringing in all kinds of people who have gotten big as well. And, you know, it just goes to show that if you really do have a certain niche that you can, you know, just work well enough around enough people, you can really change how the genre of a certain music genre looks. And that's what Wayne did with the Carter 3 and pop rap and street rap and all that dirty South and all that different stuff from that part of hip hop. And then that's what Kanye did throughout the 2000s and 2010s with all of his efforts, which, I mean, everyone, and that's the thing with Kanye, I don't think you can point to too many musical artists, period, except for guys like David Bowie and shit, where it's just each album, there's just so much behind what it is, and it's just so well acclaimed and so influential and just, you know, different, a reinvention of self, a reflection of, you know, who he was at that time. I think there are hardly fewer discographies as fascinating to delve into, discuss, analyze, think about, just experience and be part of than Kanye West's. And, you know, that alone really just, I think, pairs him well against most musicians, honestly.
Yeah. Agreed.
I haven't said anything during this whole conversation yet, because
I have I'm waiting
to say, honestly.
Here we go. It's the Bosch train time.
All right. I just want to start off by saying Kanye and Wayne are the two most influential artists on hip-hop today. Aside from maybe Gucci Mane, you could throw him in there too, but every artist in the 2010s can be traced back to Kanye and Wayne. Like, Kanye influenced the likes of Travis Scott, Kid Cudi, Drake, and then Wayne also influenced Drake a little bit, but he also influenced like the Young Thugs and the Futures and
Kendrick.
Yeah, Kendrick is a child of all.
Kendrick was influenced by Wayne too.
The most, honestly, because like even back then when he was releasing mixtapes, he sounded like a Wayne clone.
Oh yeah, he loved Lil Wayne.
He made a whole mixtape rapping over Carter 3 beats.
Wasn't that C4?
C4, 2008, same year. Yep, what a time.
Yeah, so hip hop would not be the same without Kanye and Wayne today. But at the end of the day, going back to pretty much all of your points, Lil Wayne at the end of the day is an MC and Kanye West is an artist. So I got to give it to Kanye West, and I have him winning 17-3 against Wayne.
Damn.
Landslide I got there.
That was your landslide? All right. That was
my
worth it.
landslide.
Because you said it was 16-4, I think, or did you say 17-3 yesterday?
17-3. But
Cool.
yeah, like all you guys were saying, every single era, Kanye comes through with so many iconic songs, and every one of his albums like stood the test of time. The College Dropout, Late Registration, Graduation, and then when 808s and Heartbreak came, that changed hip hop forever. Like that pretty much started the trend of like auto-tuned singing.
Oh, absolutely.
Way for artists like Drake and Travis to come forward. And then the artistic statement he made with Dark Twisted Fantasy, and then Yeezus came, and that really challenged what hip-hop could be sonically. And even though people like Death Grips might have been doing it a little before Kanye released Yeezus, but when he released that album, it challenged like the sonic direction of hip-hop so much. And every single one of Kanye's album, he has just never missed.
Oh, absolutely.
During his first like 5 albums, every single song was a hit. But during the latter half of his discography, he became less focused on making hits and more focused on making kind of like what Beyonce did with Lemonade, as I was saying, a coherent project that from start to finish has no bad tracks.
Yeah.
But with Wayne, he didn't really start having that run of excellent albums until the first Carter came out. Like Lil Wayne's first 3 albums, The Block is Hot, Lights Out, 500 Degrees, those had some great stuff on it, but no one really talks about those records that much when talking about the great Wayne records, like the first 4 Carter albums. I mean, when the Carter 3 came out, that was like definitely the biggest album of that year, and Wayne's entire run in the late 2000s with features and stuff, and how he was releasing these excellent mixtapes. Like, honestly, if you want to find out who Wayne is as an MC, don't listen to his albums. I advise you to check out 2 of his mixtapes, No Ceilings and A Drought 3. Those albums truly show what Wayne can do as an MC with punchlines and metaphors and crazy, like, out of nowhere bars. Like, those mixtapes truly show what kind of MC Wayne is.
Which dedication did you say? 3?
What'd you say?
What dedication?
The Drought.
Oh, the Drought and No Ceilings, you said?
And No Ceilings, yes.
I'm going to check them out after this.
But when it comes to Wayne albums, the Carter 2 is definitely the one where I'd say he has the best bars out of every album he's released.
Yeah, Go DJ won that round seamlessly for me. I couldn't put anything above Go DJ.
That's like incredible. I love that record.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I'd say when it comes to being an MC, I honestly put Wayne a little above Kanye. But when it comes to making full coherent projects, when you mix everything together, bars, storytelling, production, just crafting the perfect song, Kanye does that much better than Wayne. And honestly, Kanye's music has had a much larger effect on my life as a whole than Wayne. Like Kanye, he's pretty much been my favorite hip-hop artist since I started getting into the genre when I was a kid. I've been following Kanye since he first came out with A College Dropout. I didn't start following Wayne until around the Carter 3 era when he was everywhere.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, fun fact, my first CD, I came down to a choice between 808s and the Carter 3. I only had money for one. So I picked Kanye just because I had known Kanye from, a few years before with Gold Digger and just other songs off Graduation. I had known him just being around and growing up in Chicago in the mid 2000s where everybody knew of Kanye, even someone as young as I. And I just thought it was really cool to, buy a Kanye West CD for the first time and have that be my first CD. And that album really changed my life and probably defined much of my taste going forward. And I always wonder sometimes how different things might have been if I had bought the Carter 3 instead. But and then you got.
This is my favorite album of all time, and it was and it was one of the first hip-hop albums I ever bought, along with those other ones that I mentioned before. But this is the album that made me decide that rap music was a genre I really wanted to get into, and it made me think of what rap music could be in the future. Like, this is the album that gave me true hope for the genre when I was a kid, and had me thinking the future of rap is definitely going to be very bright if people like Kanye keep coming along and keep pushing the boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
That's well said.
They did.
Yeah, I got that.
Hey,
I would go pull my Kids See Ghost vinyl out and my Ye vinyl, but I'm not
I
about
don't
to.
have any vinyl, but I have like 4 Kanye CDs.
I actually remember the day you bought 808s and Heartbreaks on CD.
So, yeah, despite Wayne being an excellent MC, I'm not knocking him at all. Wayne and Kanye are both in my top 5 of all time. But at the end of the day, Kanye is my favorite artist of all time, and I can honestly say my life wouldn't be the same without his music.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so we want to take a vote? Kanye?
Kanye!
Lil Wayne? Yep. All right, next matchup, we got Kendrick Lamar versus Outkast. This is the most difficult one for me, but it's actually surprising how my stats turned out. I would like to go first on this one if nobody minds.
Go for it.
I have Outkast winning 14-6, and the more I think about it and the more I look at this list, the shorter my Kendrick wins get. And at this point, looking at it, I'd have to say it's probably Outkast 18, Kendrick 2.
Wow.
Kendrick only really goes toe-to-toe with Outkast on songs from To Pimp a Butterfly. I don't think anything Kendrick has besides To Pimp a Butterfly really touches Outkast's discography. This goes back to my point with Wayne and Kanye. I think Kendrick is a very brilliant artist. I think his music is transcendent of the times. I think he's a spokesperson for everybody right now. But Outkast just has this sense of fun and looseness and just this old school presence of just skill. Andre and Big Boy have technical skill out the ass. They are some of the most lyrically driven and technically driven rappers I've ever listened to in my life. Every single song that I have heard from Outkast, and I'm going to be completely honest, they're probably the only group I would give a 10 out of 10 to their whole discography. Andre 3000 just does it for me. He's my favorite rapper of all time. Every time an Andre verse comes on, I get excited. I get so excited. Especially that we threw was it Pink Matter into the playlist? Yeah, Pink Matter is a great Andre feature, and I'm glad you threw 16 in there. 16 was actually one of the ones that lost for me. I love 16. I think the guitar solo at the end is amazing, but I think you had it up against I by Kendrick.
Yeah.
And I had to give it to I just because that changed music at the time that it came out, and it still kind of is to this moment. Kind of put this social resurgence back into hip hop. But anyway, very quick, Outkast wins this. I can't give them any more praise than I already have. The minute skewed on the Barbie came on, barbecue, I think or Barbie, I don't know. I replayed it 7 times. And then I took like a 5-minute break because I got home and I talked to Emily, and then I went to go take a shower and I listened to it 3 more times. That is probably my favorite Outkast song besides Rosa Parks and, the hits Hey and Miss Jackson. It's just skewed on the Barbie. It's just a complete demonstration of their technical skill. It's something that just it can't be matched, especially getting Raekwon on that song. It's just a highlight of Raekwon's skill as well to go toe and toe with these absolute monsters of hip hop. So yeah, I got to give it to Outkast. I'm not even going to argue influence or anything because you can't beat Outkast's influence when you're a rapper that came out around 2009.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think influence as far as Outkast goes definitely wins so far for sure. I mean, Outkast basically put Southern hip hop, Atlanta hip hop on the map with his speech, with Andre's speech at the BET Awards in '95. Because up until that point, you had groups like Ghetto Boys, Goody Mob, a lot of
groups that were appreciated regionally and at the time. But Outkast became, in the mid 90s, something that the whole country was starting to get into. And by the time they dropped ATLians in 96, which was unlike any album that had been made in the genre to that point, I mean, that just changed everything. And they really continued to reinvent themselves, reinvent hip hop, reinvent just the way we think of how to construct a hip hop song and go about rapping. And that, I think, is just a testament to Outkast really being the greatest hip hop group or duo of all time. And in just the way that they not only mastered the craft in their own way, but then they made everything by their rules and then made the South play by their rules. I mean, their influence was tremendous to the South. Now, that being said, along with their discography being great, I also, the way I look at it is, you have the pioneers, you have the guys that came first, the guys that drew the path with Outkast. And the way I always have looked at Kendrick as a hip hop artist, he is the culmination of pretty much every great hip hop act that we've had, may it be Outkast, Nas, Tupac, Lil Wayne, whatever. Kendrick is the embodiment of all of these forces that we've had in hip hop for, around 30 years, just kind of coming together into one man who is smart enough to know how to take all of this inspiration and make it his own and choose his own path and then build and carve out his own discography, of which is probably more just incredible and profound to me than maybe even someone like Kanye's, because when you look at specifically the roots, fundamentals of hip hop, and the way it's about expressing something, an idea, a story, a thought, an emotion, just anything, Kendrick to me might be the best at doing that and relating it on a personal level while being able to lace it in a more global narrative that is not spoon-fed to you by, like that's something to me where an artist like Kendrick is set apart from someone like even Nas, because as great of a storyteller Nas is, or someone even like Andre, they're a lot more straightforward, whereas Kendrick knows how to kind of, paint a picture in his mind of an idea and express it in his own way, just how he kind of, goes about his problems with his families and his relationships and things through a drunken perspective, like on you, just ideas and concepts like that are just so creative to convey a simple idea, something like family issues, that you could go about in a very straightforward manner, or you could come up with an idea like that. And the fact that he can do that for songs that then transition into other great songs that embody what to me are perfect albums. I mean, Good Kid, Mad City to me is probably my favorite narrative hip hop album. I'd say it's my favorite album of the 2010s of any genre. I mean, it's an album that even through hundreds, if not thousands of plays at this point, has never gotten old to me. There are songs that will come on from that album and I will forever enjoy them. And living through that and living through that album, being around and being the thing that Kendrick had to offer, and then not knowing what he was going to come up with next, and then having I come out, and not everybody liked I at first. I remember quite a few people didn't.
Yeah, the single version was weird. I didn't like the single version, but when the album version came out, I loved it.
I think both versions are really good, and I just thought it was very interesting how odd just the single version was in general, because it was so different from what anything Kendrick had done up to that point, but just how people were, kind of iffy about it. Some people loved it, some people didn't.
I don't think it was until the SNL performance people really got into it, to be honest, because the live performance of that was just something insane.
That's true. That was one of the best SNL performances I've ever seen, by the way.
We could do an episode on SNL performances, to be honest. That would be fun.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, like there was this whole mystery as to what he would do next, and even to some doubt. And then the moment, I remember all of us, we were able to get our hands on that Kendrick LaBitch leak that was a censored version of T-Pab about 7 days before it's a formal drop. And, at that point, King Kunta and Black of the Berry had also come out as singles. So we knew he was taking a dark, aggressive, a very topical, very passionate approach. And we just weren't sure how it was going to come out. But when you heard that album, for the first time, To Pimp a Butterfly. I heard it in this very room I'm sitting in right now. I mean, it was the most profound experience I've ever had on a first listen of an album, or second or third or fourth, fifth. I've heard that album again, like Good Kid, Mad City, hundreds of times, and it doesn't get old. And I love how, you know, it tops Good Kid, Mad City thematically, and just with how weighted its topics are and how well it transitions through all of it, and how musically well developed and fleshed it is. But just the fact that he made back-to-back, you know, just perfect albums that redefined how we go about hip hop and culminate so many things of hip hop past, I think is just truly genius. And it's just that point of evolution where you just get that guy who is incredible and just cannot do no wrong, because even the leftovers of T-Pab to me are perfect. I mean, Untitled Unmastered does not have a bad moment, or a moment I wouldn't say is great on it. And then you get into Damn, which is just a totally different approach to, you know, the similar structuring that I recognize in Kendrick's albums, where he has these internal conflicts that he kind of works through, that he also relates within his environment, both directly and throughout the world. That's basically what a Kendrick Lamar album is, but he has found 3 different ways to approach, actually 4 different ways to really approach these topics in ways that were insightful, intriguing, all around. I mean, just an experience that is unlike anything else I can even find in hip hop. And although I did grow up loving Outkast and hearing them as one of the first hip hop rap anythings I'd heard in my life, because my mom played them when I was about 3 or 4, I believe, I still have to go with Kendrick on this, just because of him coming at the right time in hip hop history and contributing what he did with everything that he had thought of and acquired, and all of his talents of his own right that he has honed to just a masterful level. I mean, even as a feature artist, he has absolutely ripped some verses, unlike most hip hop artists or legends of our time have. And I just think when we look back on all of this, you're going to see Kendrick as just kind of in that 1980s era equivalent for music, for hip hop, in just that, you know, he came at a certain time after all these great things that were made in the 70s and 60s, and just made something really great for that time, culminating influences before. And I think hopefully his influence and legacy will reach another artist in the future who will take, you know, similar things and all the other influences from this time, you know, not just Kendrick, but J. Cole, Young Thug, Travis Scott, older artists like Kid Cudi, things like that. You know, that's what we're seeing today. And I think we'll see unfold to a level that we saw with Kendrick last decade, in this decade, in the coming years. And hopefully Kendrick can continue to be play a veteran role substantially in that evolution that continues to unfold with hip hop, which is another thing I kind of dock Outkast for, almost because of how they just kind of split apart and did their own things, but just could not find that level of being impactful on a solo level, or even as, you know, record producers trying to find proteges. I think they've done good collabs over the years, especially 3 Stacks, but I think that just comes with the territory of being certified unique legends as Big Boy and 3 Stacks are. I don't think musically they've really added that much in the past 15 years. So I definitely wonder what Kendrick will do for the remainder of the prime of his career and beyond, and whatever his legacy will embark past that and past his time. Because I don't know if his prime is done yet. It'll come down to what this next album he has, whatever it will be, sounds like. But he's already done so much. I mean, most people with the mindset that I have, and that would be a lot of hip-hop fans, would agree that Kendrick is either the best or one of the best hip-hop artists and rappers.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree to that. Andre 3000 has got my personal bias.
Yeah. And I love Andre 2002. Like I said, I've been listening to him pretty much my entire life. And, you know, he's probably like my second favorite rapper after someone like Kendrick, or maybe like Kanye or whatever.
And we're talking about influence with Andre. I want to actually bring up a quick funny point. Yesterday I was driving down the road, and I live in a college town, very small college town. There's always people out going to the bars on Fridays and stuff. There's a bunch of people drive. I was driving down the road blasting Miss Jackson, and I rolled the windows down and I drove through town blasting it, and I yelled out the window, "I'm sorry, Miss Jackson," and like 3 different groups of people went, "Ooh."
Yes, and that's the thing is that Outkast not only transcended Southern hip hop to the rest of the hip hop landscape, but then they took their music, whatever the fuck you would call Hey Ya or Miss Jackson and things like that are almost genreless in the way that they approach, and just took them to the whole world because everybody knows those 2 songs. Everybody, not a soul on this earth that is cultured. Even
Rosa Parks has a lot of traction for the amount of social content in that song.
Yeah, and
that's a dance song out of Rosa Parks too. Like, come on, give them props.
And it's just like Outkast. For the singles, I actually picked them 11 to 9 because they have so many just iconic singles.
Yeah,
even things like "So Fresh, So Clean," B.O.B., "Bombs Over Baghdad," great songs.
Yeah.
Obviously, the things from the '90s. I mean, they have so many good singles, but then they have really good album cuts too, like "Return of the G," like we were talking about.
I'm glad that made it on the list too. I'm glad Return of the G was on the hits list.
So I mean, it's kind of hard to really pick one over the other because really they do have 2 flawless discographies, unlike anything else that pushed the idea of what hip hop could be beyond what it was at its time. Yeah. And that's really the most you can do as an artist. But when to do it at such a profound level, like both acts have, it's unlike anything else. I mean, I wouldn't even say Nas, Jay-Z, Eminem, or, those guys are quite as impactful to music as a whole.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to Bosch and Todd. I know Todd got some brief thoughts, so let's just move to him really quick and then let Bosch close this out.
I just picked Outkast because they're more influential, and I think their songs are better on the playlist. That's just why I picked them.
Yeah.
Choruses. I love the songs with like glossy choruses like that. I just think Outkast is better in that department. So Outkast for me.
Bosch?
My thoughts, I'm going to keep it pretty brief, kind of like Todd. This one was kind of hard for me because they both have songs in their catalog that the other doesn't have. Like Kendrick doesn't have a B.O.B. or a Hey Ya on his catalog, but Andre and Outkast don't have a Black or the Berry in theirs either.
Or an I or a King Kunta,
or an All Right. Both artists have flows that can be replicated by anyone else. I mean, others have tried the Andre 3000 flow before, like B.O.B. the rapper, who's named after an Outkast song. Tried to sound like Andre, but he just couldn't replicate the magic of Andre 3000's flow.
Yeah, it's hard to. Andre 3000 something special.
Yeah, and both artists are considered like the best of their generation, and both of their storytelling skills are like some of the best in all of hip-hop.
Yeah.
And of course, both artists have experimented with different genres like funk and jazz. Kendrick throughout To Pimp a Butterfly, and Outkast throughout like ATLiens and Aquemini have experimented with those genres.
And then you got 3 Stacks doing the guitar solo at the end of 16. Like,
definitely. So,
B.O.B. attempted to be a guitarist, but it was never to a level of Andre where you can literally consider Andre hip-hop's Jimi Hendrix.
Exactly. Like, both of them challenged hip-hop to be more challenging with their instrumental choices, but at the end of the day, would there be a Kendrick Lamar without an Andre 3000? I'm wearing a TDE shirt right now, but I gotta pick Andre and Outkast for this one because their hits have stood the test of time and aged gracefully to be etched into music history, and Kendrick's music hasn't had the time to do all that yet. We don't know if, they probably will, because To Pimp a Butterfly and Good Kid, Mad City are such iconic albums of the 2010s, but...
Well, let me dispute that, because one thing to speak on expansion of hip-hop as a culture, one thing I noticed immediately and in the years since, especially with To Pimp a Butterfly, was that Kendrick really brought the idea of hip-hop and how good it could be to the rest of the musical community throughout the world. I mean, people who are into indie rock and older music and things that, you know, are nothing like hip hop loved To Pimp a Butterfly. They loved that Kendrick album. They heard about it. They listened to it. They really liked it. And that's an album to me that really reached across the spectrum of music better than I think really any hip hop album ever has. And you kind of look at it as like Outkast being sort of the Michael Jordan, you know, coming first and taking basketball to the rest of the world. But then, you know, Kobe just brings it to that next level where, you know, now people that don't even like hip hop are suddenly loving To Pimp a Butterfly.
But you had that with Hey Ya, and you had that with Miss Jackson.
But do people acclaim those songs, especially like Hey Ya, as much as a piece of work like To Pimp a Butterfly? Like Hey Ya.
No, they don't. I get what you're saying there. I'm just saying, like, Andre has that expansion. He can go past hip hop for sure. He can get more people into hip hop.
But it's one thing to actually dabble with it yourself, and then to actually bring it to fans of those kinds of music. And the fact that Kendrick is an artist for a music fan, not a hip hop fan, and Outkast, I would say, is also for music fans. But to me, you'd have to have more of a developed taste to really get into Outkast records.
It took me a while to get into Outkast. I'll be honest, I didn't really get into them until the last 2 years, and I loved Kendrick up until that point. I still love Kendrick, but Outkast has definitely taken my crown as one of my favorite groups next to Tribe Called Quest. I have Andre and Q-Tip like head to head in my number one spot for hip hop right now.
Exactly. Whereas it just seems like people are more able to casually listen to Kendrick Lamar if they're not already into hip hop, which is pretty cool, I think, because there's not a lot of artists you can say that about. Like, even Kanye, most people have to already be fans of the kind of music to like.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
I definitely agree with that. But if Outkast never made an album like Aquemini, would Kendrick have been able to make an album like To Pimp a Butterfly?
Probably not.
Probably not. And that's a great point as well.
Because they started that whole influential trend of introducing funk and jazz and stuff into hip hop.
And that's the thing is Kendrick is truly the culmination of all of these different influences.
Yeah. All right. So do we want to take a vote?
Yep.
Kendrick?
2000 and Outkast.
I'm going Kendrick.
Oh, wait. Okay, so Bosch called Outkast.
Yeah.
So Outkast?
Yeah.
Kendrick. Yeah, I figured. Nick had a lot to say on Kendrick. You brought a lot of good points to the table.
That's not to say I think it's some kind of landslide. Really, I think it's more of a tie, and it comes down to their placement in history.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I believe it's a tie. I'm personally just giving it to Andre based off personal bias because you can't really go off a tie.
I mean, they're both of my favorite musical discographies as anything. So it's great to talk about this and really think about it.
I'd go more into it if we had, but I really can't. So.
Yeah, it's getting late. This podcast went on for a while this time. We're definitely have to allocate more time next time.
Yeah.
But let's close it out. Thank you guys for tuning in to our first Verzuz episode. If this is something that you want to see us do more of, leave comments, likes, shares, all of the good stuff. Definitely subscribe to the channel. We plan to do these bi-weekly. We might change the orders and, dabble into stuff more than hip hop eventually. But this is a taste of what we're trying to get into for a certain format. Oh, yeah. We definitely got to go into rock music. That would be great.
Yeah.
Punk music.
We've not discussed that.
But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in to our second episode, and we hope that we can keep you entertained and that you come back for a third one. All right. Have a good night, guys.
Good night, everyone.
See you guys. Have a good night.